Welcome, everybody.
Nina Dooley.
Good to see everybody. Welcome to the August 3rd, 2021 CRB Board Agenda Meeting. Can I have a call to order?
All right, let's see if I can do this.
Chair Lewis,
Here.
Vice Chair Campenny.
Here.
Board Member Dooley.
Here.
Board Member Mickelson. Board Member Schroth.
Here.
Board Member Waka.
Here.
Board Member Walson.
Yes.
And at this time, could we please stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I want to say we're not doing anything on Monday night. We have a little get together at the Blake Library,
Nice.
I hear.
public meeting, Tanner Highway approval of Costco matter.
Should be quick, right?
Well, it should be easy. Yeah. All right.
I want to see some people in the community, they'll all be there.
You know,
Is there a motion for approval of the
if they've already
minutes?
spoken at the last
So
meeting,
moved.
do they
All
have
those-
no right
all
to
those-
speak at
second
the
it?
next one?
All those in favor?
Aye.
I was
Aye.
teasing.
Okay. All right, we're going to move to approval of the agenda. Before we do the approval of the agenda, we're going to move item 2. If the board has no problem with that, ahead to item 1, that's okay. We've been asked by staff if we can do that. All right.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very well. Before getting started, is there any general comments from the public not related to agenda matters?
Is there anything on Mr. Zoom?
Nothing on Zoom, nothing online? All right, moving
I
forward.
did see a class action was filed against Zoom for failing to protect people's privacy due to being Zoom bombed. And the members of the class are getting a $25 refund. The lawyers are getting a new jet.
Sounds about
I
right.
like it.
So what type are you going for?
I get both, I was the lawyer.
Oh, and you were bombed. All right.
The city store did not make the claim. Although we did have a paid membership and license qualified. I don't think we even got the notice. They'll probably be sending that out next, but the settlement is
Yeah.
$25.
Okay.
Because it's based upon what your membership fee was.
All right, any general comments from the board, unrelated to agenda matters before moving forward? Not seeing any. All right, we're going to move right down to, where are we at? CRB matters. All right, we're going to take the item 2 first, the presentation of the proposed Triangle District Master Plan.
Thank you. Panal Gandhi Savda, CRA Administrator for the record. We have Jessica Seymour here from Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council to give the presentation on the Triangle District Master Plan. Just a brief, sorry, can you hear me?
Very low.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. So the CRA contracted with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council to prepare the master plan for the study area. This area is roughly bounded by Dixie Highway to the east, Federal Highway to the west, and Ocean Boulevard to the south. This is a mixed-use area with offices, automotive uses. Church parcel takes most of the area in this district. And there's also the AT&T building. And recently, as you know, that city-owned parcel was developed for housing apartment building. So the reason CRA was interested in looking at this area because even though we have this housing and there's a potential for redevelopment in this area, there's a lack of infrastructure to encourage walking in this area. So we want to look at this area to see how we can improve the walkability, how we can encourage redevelopment in this area, and provide pedestrian connectivity to our old downtown district and the new, the Creek Arts and Entertainment District. So I'll let Jessica take it from here. She's going to provide details about the existing conditions. We had public input. So she'll provide information on the outreach program that we did, tour of this area. She'll walk you through each street and the existing conditions and how it could be improved, and recommended action items to encourage redevelopment and pedestrian activity in this area. Jessica?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you guys for having me. Can you hear me?
No.
Yeah.
I can project, but I don't think a Zoom.
Oh, sorry, let me end this.
Well, again, thank you for having me here again to talk about a master plan. As Pinal already introduced, this is focused on the Triangle District. Last time I was here, I was talking about the US 1 corridor. This is, in a sense, the second chapter of a master plan exercise for the city that we've embarked on. Pinal's already described the area. Here's another map of it. It's just under 20 acres in the city. And then again, just to remind you all, the other master plan that we presented the last time I was here in June, I believe, is the US 1 corridor study. That was submitted to DEO and accepted as part of a grant program. And we're hoping to, that's been accepted by the CRA board, the commission, and by your board. We may be seeing it again.
Right, we will do a resolution to adopt it next month.
Okay, just checking. This is that timeline. So here we're in August. We're inching our way towards the final Triangle master plan, hoping to have that also adopted in September. So the public input, some of you were there. We had a great time. We had over 50 participants. We walked through the Triangle District, which was a real advantage, to really see what the on-the-ground conditions are and get real-time feedback on that. We also collected feedback through notes at the workshop on the maps. We conducted individual surveys with the CRB members, with as many
Property owners as we could get to. I think you lost my audio again. And we did the community survey. The community survey, we had tremendous feedback from that survey with over 700 responses. Most of those, I think you went through the demographics of those responses in the last presentation, but those were all people who identified themselves
as people who live and work, or work in the city of Stewart. One of the most important questions that we asked in reference to the Triangle District was what words or themes resonate with you about the Triangle District. And I'm calling it the Triangle District, which is already giving away the answer that we got. But it was important for us to know, what do we call this place? It's surrounded by destinations that we're all familiar with, like the Old Downtown District, the Creek, Shepherd's Park, which is prominent on the other side of US 1, and the Sunset Marina in Anchorage. So what is the hole in the middle of that donut? One way to give attention to a space that you seeking redevelopment and reconnection is to name it. And by far, the most input came in on the Triangle District with 159 participants saying that that is the name that resonates with them in that area, as opposed to Gateway, Potsdam District, or the Gateway Triangle District. So that was a pretty strong recommendation for the Triangle District as a name that resonates with people in this area. We also asked, what are the strengths of the area? Downtown, you can see, is the largest word on that word cloud. The larger the word, the more people who said that in their open-ended responses. And you'll also see how many words relate to its proximity to downtown. Again, establishing that the Triangle District in its identity is something that's close to downtown. It's an extension of downtown, and we use that information in all of our recommendations in the master plan. One of the uses that was most desirable in the area was restaurants, with 425 people saying that that's a use that they would like to see in the Triangle District. It's a really important number too, because again, establishing that the Triangle District is an extension of that downtown fabric. The restaurants were the number one use that people go to downtown for in the reported answers, in the participant study. So 96% of the people who responded to the study said that when they go to downtown Stewart, they're going for the restaurants. So it's something to keep in mind about the uses that we want to encourage and be allowed within the Triangle District. We also dived into open-ended responses, again with more word clouds to try to analyze what are the common themes that come out from there. And one of the uses that really comes out again is green space, parks, open spaces. We saw the word family. If you recall, on our US 1 study, we also saw the word family. Again, reestablishing that the city of Stewart is a family destination with the desire for family amenities. I'll breeze through some of the existing conditions because you guys are all really familiar with the area, but I want to highlight a couple of the findings that are in the report. The Triangle District is in fact home to many historic structures. These are assets. This is another strength in the district. So we want to call out these potentially contributing structures and note that these are something that is an asset that should be considered in the future development and protections that may impact the district. We also took a look at the roadway network. There's actually a really great, tight network of streets in the Triangle District. But we've also noticed that vehicle traffic is limited. We've got one-way roads, and not only are there one-way roads, but they're one-way roads that are all pointing you away from what most people are trying to get to. We heard a lot that the Triangle District is confusing, and I am firsthand, I've driven through it and found it confusing myself. Typically when you have a one-way street condition, you have one way going north, one way going south, one way going east, one way going west. So here we have 3 different roadways all pointing you south, and again, it's away from what you're trying to get to. So we recommend strongly that these roadways return to 2-way traffic, which would open up better access to the downtown, and then eventually Southeast Ocean Boulevard as well. This is important because not only the way you travel to a place for the first time is often by car. If you find it confusing and not accessible by car, you're not going to venture out there on foot as well. So that it's not just about cars, it's also about promoting that bike and ped traffic as well. And if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to interrupt me. There was a great parking study done in 2018. We built upon that parking study and we revisited this specific area looking at what changes have happened since that survey was done to the amount of parking on the street and how much asphalt is out there. So we found that there's 195 on-street parking spaces with 83 surface spaces on surface lots and 235 parking spaces in private lots or lots that are marked tow-away zones. So there's actually a considerable number of parking in the area. This photograph that's on the slide, it was taken on a Friday night in April at 7:30. This was after I had gone to Kilwins and Luna's with my kids. And I said, let's go by the Triangle District. Let's see where everybody's parking because we had just seen, car after car circling around while we were sitting at Luna's. And sure enough, this is 3rd Street. There's not a single car on 3rd Street. So it was just a telling example of how there's a concentration of uses and activity in one location, but that's not necessarily translating to every part of the Triangle District when we talk about parking needs. Of course, this is during COVID, so there may be some changes in the dynamic. Lyric goers might know about this parking and use this when there's an event going on. But on a typical Friday night, you don't have a lot of people using this on-street parking. Parking is, I bring up parking right away because it's everybody's favorite subject. It comes up a lot in conversation. So the recommendation that we have that's outlined in the master plan is to take parking and look at it in a phased approach of interventions. And again, this is building off of the parking study and many of the recommendations that were included in that parking study. So first is to assess the code. We want to understand, is the problem with parking that there's not enough of it, or is it that the code is requiring too much of it? This is an urban downtown area, again, an extension of what we already consider our downtown Stewart. And in that environment, you park once, and then you go to Luna's, and then you go to Killen's, and then you might stop by Gumbo Limbo. You're going to multiple destinations. It's a park once environment. Whereas it's a very different condition than something off of US 1, where it's a standalone business and you may only visit one site. So that's something to consider, and why we would recommend a district parking approach as opposed to a one-stop shop parking standard. The next phase, and this is where most of our recommendations live, as Panal already spoke about, we want to look at what's on the street and improve that infrastructure so that walkability and safety, and there's the maximization of all that on-street parking possible within the district. And that will help to flourish businesses and provide for a better parking approach. So there are a lot of on-street parking spaces within the district, but we did find with a full build-out of the streets and a more comprehensive look at how those could be built out, there could be an additional 50 on-street parking spaces added. And I'll run through a couple of other recommendations based off of the existing conditions that improve the walkability and the safety and the just overall well-being of the sidewalk environment. One of which is the lack of shade trees. We saw in the survey there's a desire for more greenery, more shade trees, and that's definitely a story in the Triangle District. We marked out, these are just the shade trees, so not palm trees. But these, you'll see along Joan Jefferson, there's a cluster, and along 3rd Street, there's a cluster that starts to provide adequate shade. And I encourage you to go out there and go to those sidewalks and feel the difference. It's so much better. But then when you go out onto Ocean Boulevard and portions of Dixie, it's a return to this pretty barren concrete and asphalt landscape. It makes for really uncomfortable walking conditions. It doesn't do much to help activate any businesses that may want to move into those spaces or are already there. And the impact of shade trees is, I don't think you can overstate how important shade trees are. So this is an example of Lake Avenue in West Palm Beach. And if you notice, the two streets are identical within the curb-to-curb environment. You have two-way traffic, you have on-street parking on both sides, you have curb on each side, landscape strip, and a sidewalk. The difference is what's in that landscape strip. On one side, you have large, mature trees that have been protected and allowed to grow, and on the other side, there's no shade trees. Those same power lines exist on both sides of this Lake Avenue West. You'll just see that they're a little bit trimmed over on that side and a little fuller on the other side. So this is a really nice example of what shade trees can do to a street. Another piece is, although there are a lot of sidewalks within the Triangle District, there's some really important ones that are missing. All that on-street parking that's lining the FEC doesn't have a sidewalk. It's really difficult to park there and get over safely to where there is a sidewalk. And then there's a couple of other really important pieces of sidewalk along Dixie that are missing once you do cross there.
Jessica?
Mm-hmm.
Does the city have the right of way for that?
Yes, and I will show an
Okay.
illustration of where that can come in. It's right now, the quick answer is that those travel lanes are oversized, and so there could be an opportunity to borrow some width from the existing travel lanes and put that towards a sidewalk. There's also very few marked crosswalks, so you might be safe on your 4 to 5 foot sidewalk in one location, but then you can't cross Ocean Boulevard or 3rd Street without a marked crosswalk in most of these locations. And those are some visual examples of what's going on out there. So the first picture is that FEC parking there with the essentially no sidewalk. It also dies off. It doesn't lead to you have to cross the road in order to find the sidewalk. You can't just keep walking along there. Some places along Albany where the sidewalk delineation is very rough, I would say, and where cars and the vehicles and the pedestrians are supposed to be is not clearly defined. And then in that third picture, you also see how much the utility poles are really interrupting the sidewalks here. There's not a lot of opportunity to grow sidewalks in these streets. Most of the streets are a 40-foot right-of-way. So every foot really matters, and so when you have a utility pole that comes in and takes up a foot, that's doing a lot of damage to your clear path and to accessibility in this area. The next phase of looking at parking approach is to unlock those commercial lots. So those 235 parking spaces, many of which are devoted to offices that don't get used in the evenings. You know, if a restaurant wants to move into the Triangle District and needs to meet the parking needs, it'd be an awesome, you know, advantage to the neighborhood and to those businesses if they could start to use some of those shared parking arrangements. There's already an establishment of some of that in the area. That program and that could be expanded as a CRA program as the need for it arises. And it's a lot cheaper to use asphalt more often than it is to invest in something huge, multi-million-dollar project like a municipal parking garage. So this is a step you do long before you start to invest in that kind of infrastructure as a city. And then with that program, we would recommend that the city provide address some of the concerns that private business owners may have, so that it's an incentive for them as well. They could gain lighting or security or some signage that goes along with that agreement. Once you've done your walkability, you've also looked at how you can maximize shared parking spaces among commercial uses. That's when we consider metered parking in the city. That helps to mitigate, provide for alternative ways of getting places, utilizing the trolley system, because not all parking spaces are equal. There are premium parking spaces, and parking is not free. So again, this is only after you've addressed all these other steps and you still find that there's a parking need. And then the last phase that we identify is reassessing, do you need more parking? Are parking needs largely being met? If so, you know, it's a cycle. You go back to the beginning and you go through that exercise again. If they're still not met, that's when we start talking about where's an appropriate place and what are the appropriate steps towards building a parking garage. And then the third alternative would be if a single owner or a large project moves in and they require a parking garage, negotiating with that entity on how to best leverage parking for the district. And again,
Before
yes.
you move on
Yes.
to the rest, I had a question on the parking. You said that in your plan, you found 50 new spaces. I think it
Yes.
was number 2 or, you know, step 2 or somewhere in there.
Yes.
And I was wondering, did that include any on-street parking on Dixie on the west side?
On the west side, no, we don't illustrate any new parking on the west side of Dixie.
Okay.
I'll pull up a plan and I'll highlight where some of those illustrated spaces are, some of which are on Albany, proposing that one side of, Albany has on-street parking. There's some places where it's very surgical, like on Ocean, we picked up a couple of new spaces in the proposed or the recommended redesign of that roadway. We illustrate more parking.
I actually looked at the plan and saw those
Okay.
pages you're talking about, and I didn't see them there, and I thought that's somewhere down the road, that should be an opportunity that was included at some phase in there, and figure out how to do it with incentives and maybe density transfers or something that
Sure.
makes a safer walking area, and also a nicer street.
Yes, we'll pull a pin on that, and we'll take, maybe we can talk a little about that more when we pull up the street section for Dixie.
Okay,
One of the pieces that was, again, what we identified as one of the missing sidewalks there as a critical piece. One of the things that, I didn't get a picture of it, I don't think in here, but, right now, I don't know if I can laser? Yeah, I can. Okay, so right now, the sidewalk like dies right here. And I've seen, since I've been paying attention to this, I've seen numerous people cross the tracks right here because the fence dies and the sidewalk dies. And they're not gonna walk in the landscaping, so they just take, the quickest route across the track.
Do you have the Brightline FEC model for what they're gonna do with that turn lane there?
No, I have
I
been,
think Tim has it.
okay, because if he has it, they've,
It's really restricted, and there's all sorts of
Yes.
homeland security issues and all this stuff with it,
Yes.
but that little segment matters because it's
Exactly.
in their redesign.
yeah, it matters a lot, and what we've shared this with Tim, and I really want this extension of this sidewalk, and the fencing is really critical to what happens right here. On this side too, the sidewalk, there's like a 2-foot curb almost, or it's not really, can't even call it a sidewalk. It also dies on this side, and, so we illustrate expanding that sidewalk all the way through. On the west side, what also is missing though, if I can get this area, on this west side here, there could be an opportunity for on-street parking, but again, in the budget of right-of-way, we chose to show the sidewalks improving a little bit on those sides. There's not a huge expansion of the sidewalk, but a small expansion of the sidewalk. So in lieu of more on-street parking along Dixie, we've shown the sidewalks on either side. On this plan, so this is the detailed master plan, and there's, I think, a lot to absorb on here. I hope there's a lot to absorb on here. But the big pieces that I want to point out are some of the open spaces that we address in the plans. These two are opportunities with redevelopment. And then this one is one that's already part of the City of Stewart's right-of-way. This is an unimproved alley, and we'll touch on that a little bit more. And then some other elements, like creating Akron as a primary street within the district. It's the center spine of the district. And recognizing it that way with the intersection here and returning the two-way traffic. We also return the two-way traffic here. And then some places where we did scoot in some more on-street parking is the detailing of some of these curbs and streets on 3rd Street and California. Again, formalizing what that sidewalk is like with bulb outs, and the on-street parking could be in those locations. And these are the typical sections that I'll show you through. So we have one on Albany, we have the Dixie one here, California, and one for Ocean as well. So here's Albany. This is a place where, again, there's some nice elements already here. We've got sidewalks on each side, but there's been a breakdown in some locations about where the sidewalk ends, where the vehicles start. So we show some improvements along that lines. With here, it's illustrated with the City of Stewart colors on the sidewalk. We've taken out the FPL poles. Those would be undergrounded in this recommendation, which allows us to add pedestrian lighting. We've illustrated the on-street parking on one side. And there could be opportunities with grant programs to speak with some of the property owners on shielding or buffering those parking lots that exist today while still maintaining their uses. And then with all of these street sections, just to keep in mind, we also recommend that the on-street parking be detailed with pervious pavement or pavers, as well as gutters on all these new streets. The Triangle District, with the exception of Azul, does not have a curb and gutter system and has very little pervious pavement. So there's a real need for stormwater management in this area because the water can shed to the water all around us. You know, we've got Fraser to the south, we've got the St. Lucie River, you know, so there's water all around, and we could do a lot by capturing and treating that. This is California. California is a one-way road. I think that maybe this was at one time for the use of the church, but the result is that you have a 30-foot right-of-way vehicle travel lane. Not just a 30-foot right, it's a 30-foot travel lane, which is really wide. It's not using, a roadway is like a budget, you know, imagine how your priorities are, how you spend your money, right? The right-of-way is the same way. So right now, I would say that we could reallocate some of that asphalt to other uses. So here we've illustrated the return of two-way traffic, on-street parking on both sides. There's also, in this example, we show what a redevelopment opportunity could be like on those green playgrounds. Again, you know, if this property changes hands and there's new uses in here, there's a real opportunity for redevelopment where there's nothing existing there today. On-street, pedestrian lighting, and then also additional shade trees, opportunities for that planting. And enhanced mid-block crossings. When we talk about enhanced mid-block crossings like the one that we have actually in front of Memorial Park, in front of Wells Fargo, that's an enhanced mid-block crossing. It has lighting, it's raised, it's got texture, it's got color. It does a lot to slow down the traffic in a pleasant way and provide a safe way for pedestrians to cross. That's really the standard of what a mid-block crossing, which is not at an intersection, should be like to enhance safety and also promote walkability. So here was the Dixie Highway example, which we were just talking about. So right now there's 11 feet and then 11'6" in the travel lanes. And then the on-street parking space itself is 8'6". It's a little bit wide for our urban environment. We can tighten that up a little bit. We can tighten up these dimensions a little bit. The sidewalk in some of these locations is not there, you can see. And then we have this little bit of concrete that I can get out on and shimmy around the car, but most people can't, and nobody wants to. So in the illustration here, again, we show the mid-block crossing that's been enhanced with bulb outs, calling out the edges of where on-street parking is and shielding pedestrians as they wait for an opportunity to cross, adding the sidewalk, adding on-street parking along the other side of, that's California.
Mm-hmm. No, it's the one next to California, I think.
California, and then third is behind this block. And then again, we show this is a property that's for sale, so we show a redevelopment opportunity in this example, a space that could be for outdoor dining and a small indoor space.
That's the auto repair place
Yes.
right there? Okay,
Yes.
that is California.
Yes. So again, we reduced those travel lanes, we reduced the parking. That's what gave us space for expanding this sidewalk. We don't touch this fence because we're not going to get any more from the FEC. I don't expect to expand a sidewalk. And then over on this side, to also be a little clear, this dotted line right here indicates the end of the right-of-way. So this sidewalk includes part of the right-of-way, and then it's expanding a little bit onto their property, this 6 foot right here. So you add a curb and gutter, and then 6 feet onto their property so that there's a commuter-appropriate sidewalk. So in this illustration, we don't have the space for doing any additional on-street parking on Dixie Highway. Now again, with redevelopment, if there was larger parcels that got redeveloped or were redeveloped, there could be an opportunity, just like in Azul was done, to put that on-street parking. That's what happened with Azul, is that there's even more that went into that property to dedicate to the sidewalk and the on-street parking. As we move further south, further south on Dixie though, we've got a lot more smaller parcels. It would take more to get that scale of redevelopment. So this is a more modest approach in that regard, and may be more realistic unless there was an acquisition of a lot of property.
My thinking was that at this point, developing a master plan like this, that it would be a good time to start looking at maybe incentives to entice people to do that, either assemblages or ways that they could recoup money
Well,
with sale of development rights, or, just that was my thinking.
right.
If it's too hard, then it's too hard. But-
Well, and it's not necessarily what's too hard. There's a couple of larger pieces of property within the Triangle District that are an opportunity potentially today. And we also don't want to push out, though, smaller developments and the mom and pop shops that are in this area, and individuals. I mean, that's what a lot of us love about Stewart, right, is that our small homegrown businesses. So there's opportunities for that in this, so we don't necessarily want to push those opportunities out, especially when right now there could be some opportunities for a larger scale development without it, putting that incentive out there. That said, there could be a time and place where that would make sense if there are no larger scale opportunities. On Ocean Boulevard, again, there's actually a lot in here that's working. We do have on-street parking on both sides. We do have sidewalks on both sides. But again, we have some other pieces that are interrupting the context from being a more pleasant walkway. And these sidewalks are very tight. They're 4'6". If you came on our walking tour, you know that this was the single file portion of the walking tour, where we all 50 of us lined up single file on these little sidewalks. The FPL poles are a real challenge to expanding that walkability. So wherever we can, we've removed them. So the one on this side right here has not been hardened. So, that's an opportunity. We also delineate in this illustration. We spend some time to create bulb outs wherever there's opportunity to, between regular parking spaces for landscaping. One, it provides some green into this environment, which is much more pleasant than asphalt after asphalt parking space, but it also provides a bookend for where parking is today. And I think today, one of the observations we had is how few people know that there is, in fact, on-street parking on Southwest Ocean Boulevard. And part of that is because the striping has faded, but there's nothing that bookends where it starts and stops. So this is a way of fixing where that on-street parking starts and stops to help advertise that it's there and available, while also adding some green and beautification to the roadway network and some shade that's much needed. We also illustrate a few examples where combining driveways could be achieved by utilizing that alley system that exists today. And then again, this is an example of a redevelopment project on a large parcel that is currently undeveloped, and we show the widened sidewalk. And this wider sidewalk allows for the tree grades and the on-street the pedestrian lighting to be in line with each other and clear walking space beyond there. Allows for a shaded outdoor environment, which benefits restaurants and businesses and flexible uses. We would recommend that kind of redevelopment, this kind of detailing be required of any redevelopment that happens on these large parcels, so that we do enhance that streetscape environment to reflect the downtown that we want to live in. Oh, any questions before I move on? We can talk a little bit about how you approach the Triangle District. Now, this is taken from the old downtown district, the downtown that we all inhabit and are very familiar with. You'll notice that the mural, which is very nice, it creates this backdrop for our fountain. And then over here, It's not finished, and this is an important vista that, do I want to go to this area? Do I want to envision my restaurant here? Do I want to walk along this to go get my hamburgers and my hot dogs over here? Do I want to walk along here to, visit a new shop? I don't know, because I'm not sure what I'm going to get. And as a tourist or a newcomer to the city, or even as a longtime resident, this right here is not very inviting. So we want to finish that off. It would do a lot to help make the space more attractive and welcoming. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and finish all faces of the alley here and the AT&T building. What we illustrate is an example of how this unimproved alley could become a real asset and a destination within the Triangle District, building off of some of the uses that are going to happen here. This is one of the, on Joan Jefferson, we proposed the enhanced mid-block crossing away from the intersection. Since Joan Jefferson does get a lot of traffic, this would be a great arrival point to pass, and then also arrival into this activated alley, which could be part of an artist installation and be a real opportunity for providing art within the city in a public open space. All of this, all of the streets, all of the artist projects and effort could go into what could be a redevelopment project, and it shows an investment in the city that this is a part of our downtown and it's a desirable location. So right here, this is a redevelopment concept for how a series of apartments and mixed-use buildings could move into the district. Right here is the grass playground for the church. This is the AT&T building, and we preserved the trees that line the front of 3rd Street. This is the asphalt parking playground for the church, and this is the church. And so, again, this is just here to inspire and provide an illustration of what kind of rooftops could fit into a space like this. It's not at all required or what has to happen with the master plan, but again, an inspiration for what could be here and the kinds of uses and rooftops that could be well suited for the district. And there we go. The other gateway into the Triangle District is along US 1. So we looked at it from downtown, and then this is looking at it from US 1. And we noted that the Fraser Creek Bridge someday will be replaced. And when it does, we want to see it reflective of the Stewart's character. So including the pedestrian lighting, enhancing it with a small hump so that there could be more navigable waterway beneath it, illustrating it with a texture and stamped concrete, along with FDOT standards, be a real opportunity to celebrate this waterway within the context of the city.
You said the pump for more waterway?
Oh, I'm sorry. It would provide an opportunity for more passage under the waterway. So kayaks, small water vessels going under. If there's a little elevation.
Oh,
a hump, yes.
I thought you said a pump.
No pump, hump.
Pumping more water?
No pumping more water. But when you're driving along here, you have no idea you just crossed a waterway. And really, we need, as a city, we celebrate our water, we love our waterways. And one way we can do that is actually by letting people know you're crossing it and making everyone aware of the influence of the water all around us. So attention to the design and aesthetic of the Fraser Creek Bridge is important. And it's also important for safety. If you add a hump and this texture, the lighting, you're announcing that this is a neighborhood where people are going to be crossing the US 1. There could be walkers, there could be pedestrians. All of these send the signal that you, as a driver, you need to change your behavior and be aware of the potential that there are pedestrians and cyclists in the area. Same thing with the textured crosswalks and a pedestrian refuge. This right here is a pedestrian refuge where it provides a curbed location where a pedestrian can stand and be protected if they don't make it all the way across in the couple of seconds there. They've done a lot. We also looked at how we can interject more shade trees and landscaping along US 1. There's a lot that, so this is a really famous example of what you can do with trees and selecting one tree species and running with it. Now, I don't know that, that US 1 will be here in our lifetimes, but who knows? But we do have our own local examples of some really beautiful roadways where trees were put as a priority and have been consistent in the type of tree that's there. This is another example. This is from South Miami Avenue, and here they dedicated one palm species for the medians, and then along the edges here they have the Royal Poincianas, and it's all the way down South Miami Avenue. And so the consistency of that planting is really striking. It's beautiful. It provides shade. It provides traffic calming. So it's had a great effect. That's something that US 1 could really benefit to help announcing the area through a grant program in coordination with the CRA. We could help to encourage that kind of planting along US 1 outside of the right-of-way and with property owners and business owners that could be incentivized. The other concept that you see here is this pavilion here. This is a city-owned property. Right now, it is currently leased, and those uses could continue, but it's also an opportunity for us to use that property to create an identifying architecture, civic and active uses that benefit Shepherd's Park there, and as well as announcing the presence of Stewart and what the aesthetics and uses in Stewart are. So this is, again, just an opportunity to announce that
Is that
within the district.
the boat place?
Yes, it's currently Duffy's Electric, which, again, is a nice use
At least,
there.
yeah.
But it's city-owned property, so it's good to know that this is something that, again, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be this building, but something that really announces the city of Stewart and is active. And when I say active, I mean that there's people in it, using it, and a part of the community. And that could be in a civic capacity, or it could be in another, retail use. But it would be a great opportunity to bridge downtown Triangle and Shepherd's Park all into a cohesive fabric. Before I go on, a pause, any, okay, all right.
Well, I'll make a comment
Yes.
on the trees, and then I'd ask staff. At one time, we did try this consistency of trees. And I don't know if we ever implemented that north of the bridge, did we?
North of the bridge, you mean
Yeah.
the median improvement project?
Yep.
Yeah, that's underway right now.
Are we using consistency of trees?
That is, we do have royal palms within city. I don't know if it's, we have a lot of different type of trees. I don't know if we have a consistency in tree within downtown. Within that core, yes, the median has all royal palms.
Are they all roll palms?
Yes.
I thought the Commission killed some.
No, they're all royal palms.
Yeah, I remember that conversation coming up during the redevelopment of it, and I remember staff looking at other palms that were more representative. We'd have a very different variety, mostly in downtown, that I find representative, and deaf ears fell somewhere along the way, even though the commission itself, I think, felt that we needed to go get an identifying tree. That was ours.
We
And,
probably all just need to pick a tree and then pick a
Sorry,
weapon.
I can barely
So we
hear you.
probably all just need to pick a tree and then pick a weapon, and whoever the last person standing is, their tree gets implemented
Yeah, I mean,
across the
that's about
city.
it. And, I'm certainly not on the commission, so I can't pick the tree. But I do know that what we've got now is a series of shotgunning trees. There's no consistency on what we put and where we put it.
And as you know, Pete, we may do stuff here, but once it goes to the commission, and even if the commission agrees to do something with consistency, they never do, because they can't leave things alone. They can't go by a plan. They must always put their thumb on every project. So
I think that's being
consistency
very
is
cynical
not
of our
something
city
we do
commission.
well.
I don't think that's the case. And if they put their thumb down, I wish they'd go along with a few consistency on trees. The other thing with US one that you mentioned with trees is that we just did business development grants for property along US one that has absolutely no trees. And we didn't get any easement or right-of-way or landscape stuff. And so I'm bringing this up basically because it pings on staff for not keeping it top of mind that trees should go in and that they should be consistent.
Well,
And thank you for mentioning that.
Of course. And, I mean, I think that, so we have, and if the board, I'm excited to hear you say that, and I emphasize the importance of that, because we are hoping that the CR, we can come back with a proposal for some tree programming that's specifically for the trees and grant improvements on. So we will, I'd be happy to,
Yeah.
speak on that more, but that's something that we have, we're hoping that we can help you guys work with that
Jessica,
concept.
is it reasonable to say that as we go through these design projects for these areas, that you as the design professional should say, this is gonna be the tree? And, I mean, if you don't start the process, it's never gonna roll out, and at least if it's, put into a plan with a bigger, context. I mean, the worst thing I think we could do is get into the debate of, what tree do we have to find Stewart, because the debate will just go on forever. But
Right.
if one of the pages in your 80-page presentation says that this is the designated tree because, we're planners and we decided it's such, at least then there's a frame of reference, and I'm not, I'm not specific to, I'm not biased towards one tree. I like
Right.
palms, I like poincianas,
Right.
each kind of has its fit. I mean, does that make sense to maybe add to this project?
I think that makes sense as a follow-up implementation project, absolutely. And I think that and that a project like that should identify, these are the, 1, 2, maybe species that are appropriate on this thoroughfare. You do have a lot of challenges with space, obviously. You need to have the right space, soil volumes to promote healthy tree growth. And then we also contend with power lines, especially on US 1. We've got some existing power lines that aren't going anywhere, so you have to meet their guidelines. So, those are words of caution that tell you that you can't, just pick whatever your favorite tree is sometimes. You do have to make some sacrifices. So you'll need maybe 2, maybe 3 at most tree species out there to try to get the coverage. But, like in this example, for example, the median tree is something that is set back from the median. This is meeting FDOT guidelines, so, because it's back 4 feet from the curb. That's it. That's one of their guidelines, that certain trees need to be back from the curb. So that's part of the reason why they probably chose a palm for the center and then a tree on the outside.
That tree was actually mentioned as one of the options, and they went with Royal Palm, which is Palm Beach, actually.
Well,
That's it's a private little
Just a
bug
pers-
of mine,
Just a perspective.
just a
right,
perspective.
just a perspective. What I will say in the city of Stewart is that there have been thoroughfares that have consistent trees. And I think, there already is some consistency, but it tends to be by thoroughfare. So Ocean Boulevard, of course, has our yellow flowering plants. We have crepe myrtles downtown now. So there's a identity that's coming through, and I think as some of those trees mature and we continue to foster some of those trees and maybe give some of them a little more love, that sort of identity may come
I
through
mean,
already.
I'll drop it now, but I just want to bring up that I think your point was well taken, that when you make the presentation to the commission, I know there are at least 3 of them on there that wanted tree consistency north of the bridge at that point, and that would be, hit them with it, because they can't forget when they put their thumb on the scale, as our cynic over here says, you know, that they like to do that kind of thing. They like consistency. They like certain kinds of trees. And if they're paying the bill, they ought to be able to do something about it. So I'm pretty sure they'll love to have your presentation on the trees.
Okay, I'll be sure to note it again. Again, this again is a concept to just note that we have an opportunity with city-owned property to define us as a city with our architecture and what kind of uses are there. So there's a long, wordy document here with all of our recommendations outlined with some brief recommendations and categorized in the near-term, mid-term, and long-term goals and implementation. But really what it comes down to are these 4 bullet points, the big ideas. Naming the area. If we have a name for the area, it's something that we can all identify, refer to. We don't have a major destination within the Triangle District, so giving it a name gives it an opportunity to be something that is at the forefront of our minds and priorities. Improve the walkability of streets inside and around the Triangle. I've spoken a lot about that already, and that means designing, funding, and building within the city rights-of-way, providing grant opportunities for improvements which could benefit both property owners and streetscapes. That, for example, could be the tree program, where we can establish those grants to provide on-street parking, provide trees for those thoroughfares such as US 1. And advocating for specific projects with coordination with FDOT and the Martin MPO. Some of these projects, particularly in the US 1 study, but also along where the Triangle District touches US 1, we've got partners to work with on those projects, which is a good thing. And we just need to be in their ears with specific projects that are important and get those items on priorities in the long-range transportation plan and their planning efforts to get them on the list. Promote the district-wide parking approach with the code and incentive programs. Again, this is really looking at whether or not our parking requirements in a downtown district are appropriate for the kinds of uses we want in the space. Parking can be a stick and a carrot. And continue to protect and recognize the historic assets that are there. Tonight, the recommended action that staff is asking for is to provide feedback on the Triangle District Master Plan and to provide direction to staff to return with a resolution to adopt the master plan and the naming of the study area as the Triangle District. So,
I'll make that motion.
All right. Well, thank you very much. It was a great presentation. Board members, there is no vote today. As she just mentioned, we're supposed to provide feedback and direction. Before we get to the board members, is there any comments online regarding the presentation? Not seeing any. All right. Is there any feedback or direction from the board members to staff?
Why don't we go in line?
Yeah, if you want to just go in line, I'll be happy to start. So, I mean, my personal thoughts on this area is that its success is, very much hinges on the ability to get people in from this area to downtown or from this area across to, the west side of US 1. I think getting them, into downtown is a little bit more in our control. I really like the idea of making Dixie Highway a little more walkable. I think that, you always have this problem with parking downtown where everybody thinks that there's no parking downtown, but if you consider the entire downtown and the Triangle District and, down by the bridge, oftentimes you can always find a parking spot. You just have to walk a little bit, which, I understand for a lot of our population is not exactly exciting. So in my mind, there's got to be a concentration on how do we improve that experience crossing that FEC, easement there, and then how do we improve that experience when it lands into downtown. There may even be a portion of this project that makes sense to bleed over onto Flagler to improve, essentially, or relook at that, crossing Flagler to get onto the sidewalk on the east side of Flagler. something in that area to just make that a little, little easier or, more attractive. A question for you. So almost all of these roadways in this neighborhood have double-loaded sidewalks on each side. And none of these sidewalks, I'm presuming, are actually 8 or 10 feet. They're all, 3 to 5 feet if we're lucky. And I'm not a planner, so I don't claim to know the answer to this. I'm looking at you for the answer. Are we better off to take that right away and say, all right, this road's getting a sidewalk on the east side and not on the west side, and that east side's gonna be 10 feet, and making them, more functional and having less of them, but making them more functional?
The answer is, it always depends on the context and what kind of context you're promoting. So we did work with Martin County for Complete Streets projects, and in that case, there were some roadways along, I think it was Salerno and maybe Cove as well, where there were portions where it's not very dense, there's not a lot of people on certain portions, so it makes more sense to provide that 10-foot sidewalk that's like a shared use path, to provide a safe place for families to be on their bikes and so on, because the roadway is, 45 miles per hour, we need to provide that space in the sidewalk. And then we'll put a smaller sidewalk, on this side. In this district, it's more important to have the sidewalks on both sides. If this, and then this is what we heard in our survey, and I think this is what most of the community would like to see in this area, is more of a downtown fabric. So if you're gonna have restaurants and retail, and some mix of uses, maybe some residential, it's more important that we get the sidewalk on both sides, because if you just put the sidewalk on one side, you may end up with a restaurant on one side, but then you got a barren side of the street on the other side. So here, it's more important that you have the sidewalk on both sides. The other piece of what you just said, and we illustrated it, and it was subtle, of course. And in the report, if you take a look at the detailing of California, yeah. So California, and again, it's something that, up on a PowerPoint, you're not gonna see, but this is designed right here, between here and here, where this redevelopment is shown as a curbless condition. So if you've been to West Palm, Rosemary Square, where they've redone a lot of their roadways, they also don't have very big sidewalks. If you don't consider where they've, built out for the restaurants and things. And what that allows you, just like on the Seminole Street designs, is that you can bleed. And actually in our walking tour in the neighborhood south of here, there's a curbless design as well. So what that allows you is you can bleed onto this on-street parking. You can also furnish it with bollards that move and are retractable so that it can be an extension of the sidewalk, which allows for that flexibility. And it's also just it's a fantastic way of designing a streetscape so that you can plan for accessibility and strollers, all that good stuff. In some of these cases, we didn't show that just because there may have already been an existing curb, and then that could create a topography issue there. But where there's opportunities to do a curbless design, because the sidewalks are so narrow, I think that that's one way you can mitigate that narrowness of the sidewalk. And again, updating land development regulations so that when you do get redevelopment, you can get that wider sidewalk. And that can be done by saying, that your setback is this, and it's gotta be an extension of the sidewalk environment. Provide a frontage zone, provide a clear pedestrian zone of X, and then you can get more of that condition.
And so with that in mind, right now, I see this area needing a clear path
Yes.
through it, and so when you're trying to get from the residences on the west side of US 1 or the south side of West Ocean, into downtown, because that's really that's what pedestrian traffic's trying to do right now. Maybe it makes sense, and I'll just leave you with this thought, to try to implement a 10-foot program somewhere through the corridor. That way you have that ability, and it's, I understand at build out, we're gonna have a development code that will, you know, in essence widen these sidewalks. We're gonna have, you know, people wanting to walk within this district because that's the ultimate goal. For now, the goal, or for now, the immediate need is that people are trying to get through the district. So, you know, maybe there's a spot where we can say like, all right, you know, we've managed an 8-foot or a wider sidewalk system through the process to get us to downtown.
Right.
Another thing, you know, I know the city's in the process of looking at these alleyways and, you know, kind of abandoning them, if you will. You know, maybe it would make sense to identify where we're abandoning a right-of-way, alleyway in exchange for some sort of, you know, addition of right-of-way on the front side of a parcel so that you can pick up those,
Right. There are some cases where abandoning a right-of-way makes absolute sense, especially when you've started to have a disconnected alleyway system. This, again, I think this needs to be treated and looked at with a higher standard when you talk about abandoning right-of-ways, because these alleyways are critical for getting parking in the rear. We all know we want to get that parking in the rear so that we can foster the walkable, bikeable environment in the front, the active uses in the front. So those alleys are really important. In some cases downtown, they already are working that way. Again, in the city, an example of where that really is working quite well is in the neighborhood just south of the Triangle District. Every single one of those alleyways has been paved with pervious pavement, and they're used. I mean, you get one parking spot, 2 parking spots in front of your business, and then you've got a flat, you know, that you rent out on the 2nd story, and those people park in the back. So you're able to break up that parking, and it really does a lot for the neighborhood, and I think that same approach could be done here. Well, here is one example where I think it starts to do what you're describing. This right here illustrates that the entire area in front of this proposed business could be fashioned like a wider sidewalk, and then also with the AT&T building. So this might be that opportunity, one of those opportunities that you're talking about that may be easier to grasp onto now to create an east-west connection.
What do you see the
Could I tie on that real quick before you change
Yeah,
on? That particular alleyway, he was talking about a direction from south of Ocean. Could somehow even easy signage be done to direct people down that alleyway? Because it's there and it's not heavily used at this point. Just a quick question on that.
Well, right now, I wouldn't recommend it, because it's, you know, overgrown with grass, and it's not gonna feel safe, and I don't want anybody going down there. But
And the gentleman that lives in the house there, that older house, has actually contacted the city on many occasions, because people go back and park in that alleyway when they want private special time.
Oh, okay.
Right.
It happens to be right outside his kitchen window.
I withdraw the question, Your Honor.
Could we put a sign up for that?
Sorry, Nick.
No, it's all right. So what is the ultimate development vision for this area, or are we just gonna leave that to the private sector? Because, you know, if this is a real urban design, you're talking 4-story buildings. I mean, if you look at the block that Azul's built on, there was the abandonment of right-of-ways and alleyways for that. And then it doesn't seem like that abandonment carries, you know, into the blocks immediately south of that. I would say, you know, if this is a 4-story environment, you're probably gonna have more requests to abandon these right-of-ways than you will to utilize them.
Right.
And, you know, in that sense, you know, I guess what's the planning perspective on that? And really, that's where my question of, like, does it make sense to take that 10-foot alleyway that's in the center of a block when someone comes in to redevelop that block and say, all right, we're gonna give you this, you know, make the protocol, we're gonna give you this 10 feet here, but we're gonna ask for it along Albany, or we're gonna ask for it along
Right. So
Akron.
I'll revise. There are a couple of spots where we did illustrate, you know, an abandonment of right-of-way. Like this one right here this was a right-of-way that was abandoned as part of Azul. So it was a little tiny sliver here, right? So, you know, continuing that with this right here, when you look at the report, is actually where, you know, I spent a lot of time talking about how these are the steps to get to addressing parking, and the very last one is maybe you build a municipal garage. Well, again, because parking's everyone's favorite subject, we did talk about, you know, where that would be an appropriate place, and we illustrate it here, and that would take up that abandoned right-of-way. If you look at Azul's footprint.
Is the southern portion of that on the Sterling property?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's
That'd
utili,
be free.
well, it's utilizing some.
We actually have
right.
the air rights,
Exactly, yes, that's that's,
but still hard.
yeah.
Billy's at the other end.
It's getting in the hard part, like getting up that 6 feet to where our rights start.
Yeah. Well, and there, you know, again, this is a nice location for it. You don't have any uses that you need to line for here. You can use the existing footprint of where there are businesses today and create a liner that actually faces this green park. I'm changing subjects on you.
I do have a nice view of the water from my office on the second floor of that building, so there are uses that get impeded.
Well, you could, you'll really enjoy whatever restaurants and shopping
Okay.
get added to the bottom, and then you can walk over here and look at the views from the city park. And
The good news, you walk from your car right into your office.
right, that too.
With shade, so.
But if you look at the footprints, so this is Azul, you know, we try to respect this. It's something that's been well received as the city. This is 3 stories. If you look at this building right here, you know, this fits within the block, and we haven't abandoned any rights of way. We've fit in more pieces, and we actually create more alley, basically, behind these uses so that we can service those buildings. This is illustrated as a townhouse, and again, we respect that existing alleyway, because that existing alleyway is what allows you to park all these cars within that kind of development.
And I understand all that, and, you know, I think Tom will back me up on this. You know, oftentimes, these things get planned, and then someone comes in and says, I want to do something totally different, and then they go out the window. So, you know, I'm trying to, you know, just kind of add a little bit of foresight to, you know, what is actually going to come through. You know, if the church is asking $20 million for their property or whatever they were asking, you're going to get a request to build 4 stories at the land development code allowed 4 square feet per square feet of land, and you know that's going to be what comes through the door, because that's the way that the economics work of
Right.
it.
Well, I think you just hit on part of it, is that the first recommendation on that parking analysis is looking at our code. Right now, you know, the amount of parking that you need for an office is not, it's like half what you would need for a restaurant in this area. So why don't we see any restaurants in this area? That might be part of the answer, you know. Why do we see office buildings coming, you know, office uses here? That might be part of the equation, that we're creating a carrot and a stick situation for the triangle that is not in line with what the uses are that we may want in this area. So that's one piece of the equation. And to answer you, I think that if a developer comes in and they say, listen, I wanna take out, you know, this street. I mean, they'd have to be providing something really phenomenal to the city, for the city to abandon.
Well, and my point is,
Right.
you know, the north side of that Akron alleyway was abandoned for Azul. So, you know, and it, you know, I'm not saying that all of them are the same, and maybe
Right.
maybe there's, you know, maybe the staff, you know, recommendation is that it's not gonna happen. I just, you know, I feel like we draw these plans and then we come back 3 years later with someone who actually wants to build something, and you know, it doesn't match. I mean, Glassford's an example off of Colorado, you know, that they came in, didn't, you
So
know,
much
meet
for
the plan, and
Duwani.
what's that?
So much for Duwani.
Yeah, and so it just kind of went out the window, but I won't dwell on that.
Well,
Everybody else has some time to talk.
I'm sorry, Duwani does, you know, there are, you know, again, right now there's actually active uses here, so I don't wanna show, you know, these guys, I want all these, you know, businesses to be successful. You know, when you come to some of these triangular spaces that are very small, you know, like what happened with Azul, that might be part of the conversation. But again, like these pieces right here, you know, this roadway, 3rd Street, these roads, and again, for most of these too, the alleys, like if we're looking at the church properties, they're assets to the business, to those properties. They need that access to service whatever parking or trash and loading that they need. I think that those are, it's hard to imagine something that would be worth the trade-off for the city and the developer in the long run. So,
Right.
right.
The last thing I'll touch on is parking. So a lot of the commercial parking in this area is actually rented. So there is, you know, existing dollars being paid for those spaces after hours, during hours, you know, whatever the case may be. And, you know, I don't know if that is, you know, I don't know if that information's helpful in establishing, you know, some sort of defense to this idea that nobody should pay for parking ever, because they are currently paying for parking. And if they're
Right.
paying a little bit for parking now, we've already established that people are willing to pay for it. It's just a matter of how much and at what level does it justify you know, a parking garage or meters or whatever. So I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't getting, you know, lost in translation. You know, our parking lot at the Sterling Building gets rented after hours. The, you know, Breckville, I think, rents, you know, his spaces for something or other. So there is an economic return to that parking in the form of dollars, and maybe that, you know, gets explored a little further to see how it leads into something of a, you know, justification for, you know, some investment in parking.
Right.
Along those lines, Canal had instituted that valet parking program that was a pre-COVID thing. It was actually really successful. I mean, there was a lot of people using that. I know COVID kind of wiped it out, but people were paying for it and using it. It was working.
Well,
Yep.
you know, we said that this, and I think you did it very well, is like a historic district. And I like the the homes we have there. I like the way they give us our Stewart flair. I think that is much more indicative of old-time Stewart than anything downtown. So I'd like to see us keep it as much as possible as a historic district, and to use our code to do that, not just with the buildings that are there now, but when new buildings come in. If we could possibly do it that way, it'd be great, and keep the larger development along Dixie and Ocean, but leave the rest of it to what it naturally is. In some cases residential, but not necessarily. You have offices, as you said, and I think we should allow for restaurants. But if we don't really work hard to maintain that, we're gonna lose that. And I don't think we wanna lose that. And I agree with almost everything Nick said. And I'm gonna agree with the trees if we can, and, you know, with all of that and making those streets two-way. But at the end of the day, if we do not use a form-based code here, we're gonna be destroyed in the long run. When people say Stewart is changing, it's changing because we only look at one project at a time, and we move on one project at a time, and then a developer naturally wants to maximize, so he comes to the commission, and the commission says, oh yeah, we'll give that to you. And so there is never, as you said, Pete, any consistency, and we lose our character. This is the, to me, this and the Shepherd's Park neighborhood is where we really have character in the city of Stewart, and I'd like to see it continue.
Noted, thank you.
My only comments is, I mean, a great presentation. I like the idea, I like the whole triangle district idea. I think we learned in the last board meeting with the CRA that it doesn't matter if we like it, it matters whether the CRA likes the name, because they're going to decide whether they're going to send you back and pick another name if they don't like it. Just like the signs we had to, most of us agreed on, except for Pete.
Pardon?
I was talking about the sign that you disagreed on us the last time.
I turned out to be right, didn't I?
That's right, and you're right, that's my point. So the CRA is gonna do what they're gonna do as far as the name. I like the idea of developing it. I agree that it's really confusing. I don't know if that was because when the bridge went through and all the roads got diverted and everything like that. That's my last memory really of going down there. It is confusing.
I think to that point, I think that at one time, the traffic engineering may have been focused on, well, how do we get people out of downtown
Yeah.
at rush hour quickly? And so the roads were, how do you get people out? Well, people, they come in the way they leave, so I don't think it's had that effect, and so that's just a note. That's the only thing I kind of dug up on to why that happened that way.
And I like the idea of expanding downtown and kind of making it that. Now, I am a big parking person. And we hear all the time that it's basically the problem's perception, and I always say that, well, perception's reality with me. I can tell you, 3 times this month I came down here downtown for lunch, and because I couldn't find a parking space, I just went somewhere else. I agree with you that ideally, we would want a place where, hey, you come in here, you can park your car, and you go to this business, and that business. For me, downtown, it's not for me. I'm not shopping at Gumbo Limbo, I'm not shopping at April Days, I'm not getting art at a gallery, or, even buying ice cream. Just because. Unless I'm buying something from my mom, I'm really only coming down here for the restaurants. And if I have to go around and do circles and park across the street to go over there, I'll go to Fujiyama, I'll go to Benihana.
I know, I've seen you there.
You see me there, I know. And that's my thing, and I get, hey, you can go across the street and park, but I can go to any other restaurant in town and park right there and not worry about it.
He would rather go to the gym than walk.
Exactly. I get my walking in there. But again, so the point is that I'm trying to tell myself, well, what's going to get me there? And it depends, if there's something there, I will go there. I look at city places and places like that, Palm Beach, at the gardens at Palm Beach or whatnot. Those are places where you'll park and you'll eat at the restaurant, and you may go down and look at some of the, shops there. Ideally, I wish that was downtown Stewart. I don't think we are there yet as far as meeting that type of demographic where, you're gonna get people coming from Palm Beach visiting us just to go to the shops here downtown. Maybe, hopefully, but, I don't know. But with that being said, I think the easier the access, the easier the parking, the easier, the more accessibility, and then if we put the want to down there, people will go. It's just a matter of making it easy enough there. And and we'll talk about parking garages another day. That's my 2 cents. Mr. Walker?
Okay, well, I think you guys did a really marvelous job. I like a lot of the innovative ideas that you did, the artist's path and all of those things, to tie stuff together, because what's really missing down here is trying to make it so that it's not kind of bad to be there. Like right now, walking around there is uncomfortable. And I think that Dixie, comfort and the reason why somebody wouldn't park over there is because you're gonna have to walk through the sun and get across the tracks in more sun, and then eventually you'll get there, right? And it creates an issue. So I think you've addressed a lot of the things to try to make it more comfortable. I agree with Tom 100% that I think we need to look at scale here to try to tie it into what people feel about in Stewart. And I think it's a real problem, not only in the city, but also in the county, in that density is given away rather than making people get it from somebody else who has something that might be a more valuable resource, such as a historic building. And rather than tearing the building down, a historic building, if you offered, say, hey, will you buy the rights to what additional density could be going there, as opposed to just giving density. They give density out all over, and that's what creates the problems, because we need more parks, let's say, and that was a big item on this, then the only way you're gonna get them without spending a lot of public dollars is by having a density transfer. And the same thing could occur for historic buildings. Regarding I love your district-wide parking approach. That's, you know, that's what it needs. It's not that giant of a district that wouldn't work. It's, you know, it could easily work. The key to Dixie Highway, in my opinion, is however you do it, is you make it less hostile. Like, I don't care on which side of the road you're on, if you're parking there and walking to downtown or anywhere else, you're in a hostile environment. It is not a comfortable place to be doing whatever it is that you want to do. And I believe we need to have incentives and a code, you know, disincentives and incentives that will create those things down here. And that's all I have written. I do have a motion regarding trees later on, but I'll do that later.
Okay. Board Member Julie?
I agree with a lot of things everyone has said today. I agree with the two-way traffic. When I'm driving down there, I get confused as well. There's, oh, can't go this way, got to go that way. So I agree with the two-way traffic. I agree with the shade trees. We do need more shade trees over there. I agree with Tom on the fact that, you know, you don't want to disturb that little area. You want to keep it like it is, but I agree to maybe enhance it, enhance what's there, not to take away what's there now. I agree with the parking. Parking is a big problem downtown, any downtown you go to. I agree with Chris. I'd rather just pull up instead of do 5 or 6 laps. You know, I'd just rather pull up somewhere and be there. The sidewalks, I definitely agree on, need to be wider. I like the fact that, you know, we want wider sidewalks, easier sidewalks to walk on, manage. That's a great thing. And when you were talking about the little painting on that one thing with I think the AT&T building.
Yes.
Who does those murals?
So that was done as part of, I think.
Barletta?
Pinal-
That was Lynn Bartlett.
Yeah.
Yes.
Barletta did it.
And
Yeah, visionary.
she contracted with AT&T to
With the
do
school,
that.
and
And
school
it was a
used
hard
it.
task. I
Well,
mean,
it
it
was
took her,
It was multi.
yeah.
The CRB donated some money. AT&T and Lynn Barletta created a relationship that allowed their property to be used, and she got the school to donate the students, or no, that was the other one.
We didn't donate any money for that.
We
That was
didn't-
before the mural.
This is before we had the
Students
mural
did that one.
When I
program.
had to do a document.
Yes,
for
we-
that,
She was asking for
I
a
had to do
waiver
a
of fees
release
for
and all sorts of
conditional
stuff for
use.
it.
But I
Simple
remember
question.
There
because
were
I brought Lynn
kids painting
to
it.
Paul.
I remember kids
Right.
painting it.
Oh, was it the kids? I thought the kids did the mural on Colorado.
They did some of the fish. You could donate money, and then
Right.
they would make
Yeah.
more
And
fish.
there were 175 for the smaller ones, and
Yes,
300.
and I think a few of the
500.
kids did
But
some
anyway,
of
for what
the
it's
fish.
worth, the answer to the question is that all the murals are different, and that the city does have mural programs, but that private property owners have the right to do it straight out themselves without coming through the CRB.
That was my question.
Right.
Is there a
So
certain
because the-
design that people can vote on before the murals actually go up?
Right, so inside the report, what we outlined is a recommendation, because it is such a prominent facade, and it really is like a welcome to
Yeah, and
the
it's a
area. I
huge
mean, if
space.
you've only been to downtown, you're not gonna venture into the Triangle District if it doesn't look inviting, and
Right.
that's an important aspect of that vista there. So what we recommended, and of course this would have to be something that's worked out, like was already described with AT&T since they own those walls, but doing an RFP process. So it actually soliciting, like, you know, quality, I mean, not, all of our murals are beautiful quality, but something that's something that we can really identify with and have a competitive process for could really pull that building and bring the mural that exists and those other three sides together so that it's something really attractive that the city can be really proud of. There, again, it could be something that's part of the existing mural program, or, like I said, like an RFP competitive process for an artist to submit their designs, and then that could be something that is evaluated at the CRA and CRB.
that was just my question with the mirrors. I just think whatever goes up there, should just be inviting for all.
Right,
You know.
absolutely.
So be welcome to downtown Stewart or the Triangle District, whatever we're calling it. Just something nice, inviting for everybody. And that's it for me.
Board Member Walson?
Yeah, not much I can add to that, thank God. I'm very impressed, frankly, with your perception of and vision on what makes people comfortable and how to do it. I agree with the changing of the direction to increase the roadways. I think sidewalks are extremely important. I think trees are very important. My concern echoes Nick or maybe Tom to some degree, in that when we get the Baptist church, for example, which I didn't even know they were going to be selling, Nick, are they?
I mean, they put a price tag that would make the Lord very happy on it. If they-
Have you
if
bought
they
it yet?
do-
No.
I heard somebody recently say that there was a letter of intent or something that was there. Are you?
I mean-
representing somebody in it?
No, I'm not involved in it. I'm just, from an economic standpoint, if they got anything close to their number, I assure you, you'll see a 4-story building
Yeah.
with a
More than
floor
one.
coverage ratio of 4 to 1,
Right.
coming
The
through.
city manager told me he thought that there was somebody that actually was like way further down the path than just talking with them.
Yeah, I heard the same, and even, I mean, not that, I say that jokingly as a bad thing. I don't know that it's always a bad thing. If you look at the floor area ratio of Azul and you look at some of the,
Right.
the Civitases and the redevelopment, of some of these areas, I just think, it'd be nice to provide some guidance in that direction as we go through these planning processes.
Well, and I think that'll be contingent upon whatever development approvals they want anyway, so that would remain to be seen.
I think what Nick said that got to me was that without your presence and this being top of mind to staff, all of this will get forgotten. Staff will forget trees, they will forget, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to say this, but in the exigency, in the rush to build, that alleyways will get forgotten. Trees will be minimized or not, and some of the wonderful ideas that you actually have in there to make it be, a place that is Stewart, as Tom says, will get forgotten without somebody there moving forward to say, look, you saw this plan, this is what you designed, this is what you said at the time. How do you feel about this project, and what do you want to do to make it look like what you'd like?
I think that goes hand in hand with Mr. Campenny's comments about a form-based code.
Right.
And discretion. Colorado Boulevard was the subject of an expensive charrette. Following the expensive charrette, a downtown urban code overlay zone was put on it. The design was to design something very similar to downtown Fifth Street in Naples. We have wide sidewalks, and every building is 2 stories tall. The very first project, and Greg Sweden's a great guy, or Gene Sweden's a great guy, and he built a nice property or whatever, but the very first project after that was Gene Sweden's law office. That's a ranch-style, single-family building set back from the road with 2 driveways that go around with parking in the back with the single story, and every single condition of the urban overlay was waived. And can someone remind me of a new building other than that was built? The answer is no. The only thing that was built was
The cleaners
I guess
building,
the-
and they
well,
only did the same
They
thing.
did the 555 building, they renovated it, but it stayed the same. Then they turned the car place, Ted
Goodyear.
Glasswood did the auto thing, but it wasn't a new building, they used a footprint of what was there. And so nothing else was like a new construction, but all of them waived the 2-story, waived the porch, waived the up to the curb, waived every single condition of the urban overlay.
And Mike, I want to be clear, when I say those comments, I think there's a disconnect oftentimes, and I see this, and not to be disrespectful to anybody, but I see this all the time, especially I'm dealing with it in St. Lucie County, where you have this academia of planning, and then you have the economics of development, and the planning, you know, gets planned, and then the development comes in, and it really just matters as far as like who's hungry enough for development to start waiving all this stuff that we,
Without a doubt.
you know, and so I don't know, you know, what
Right.
the, I don't know what the solution is. I'm just pointing
A
out that,
form-based code that's risk-free. If you adopted a form
Well-
that was really a cool code, and I didn't have to risk going in front of a board at all, and I knew if I paid that seller that price, I could go in tomorrow and pull a permit, what happens is the negotiation, the price, land value is one thing, and then it's conditioned upon approval, and then everybody's gotta go fishing for the approval.
and let me tell you, from a broker standpoint, I have not sold a piece of land that has not been subject to approvals
Ever.
in
Right.
many, many years. So what you've done is taken the liquidity or any kind of liquidity out of real estate, because nobody really knows what they can or can't get, or, you know,
Right.
how it's gonna be treated, and it all boils down to this, you know, the outcome of this process. And I'm not saying that I have the solution, I'm just putting out there the reality that, you know,
Right.
we all sit up here and speculate on what, you know, should be there. You know, Tom likes the cute old buildings. I'd say half of what you've showed there, you know, probably doesn't really have much historical value. So we can, you know,
Right.
chat about that, and it's really just, you know, barstool talk at the end of the day, because none of us are putting up our dollars to really, you know,
So,
drive the ship.
And I will
okay.
say that, looking at Knight Kiplinger and his form-based code that did you write that? No,
No.
it was, what's her name?
Marcella
Marcella.
worked on that. with
I mean, that tells what can be built there. There's very little deviation from what can be
Sure.
built. And that's what gives the consistency to these type of neighborhoods.
So that, I mean, and that was a really wonderfully done plan and project, and I think it'll turn out really great. But it is a different set of regulations and environment than what we've got here, because this is a living, breathing city today, and that's a greenfield situation. So there are some differences. And, you know, they'll have a town architect that will be, you know, part of the process, you know, and that negotiation is there. But a lot of those lessons can still be translated to the city of Stewart. To your point, I would say that this is one of the weapons in that conversation, or tools or exhibits or for staff and for you guys as a board and for the commission to communicate with developers, so that there is that expectation. You know, there's some, you know, we're talking about the cute historic spaces here, you know, and we have Azul, that's a larger development. How do we marry the two? And this is an example, and these are drawings that we can point to on how we can marry something that's larger, maybe, you know, has a bit more of an intense impact than, say, you know, one cottage, you know. But how do we marry those two uses together to create a cohesive and livable city that we all are proud of? So this is one of those tools, and this is one of the pieces that we can use adopting this. You know, the charrette process for Colorado, although it may not have resulted in all of the form that we wanted and was part of the aspiration of those goals, it has still been very successful in activating that street. It's one of these complete street projects that in academia we point to, because it actually shows you know, a safer sidewalk, more revenue for businesses, more openings for businesses, less vacancies, and all those good things that we're trying to do here.
And I think that my perception of Colorado, not knowing, you know, the nuances of the code, or that it's
Right.
been successful. And so if the goals can concentrate on the right of way and the property essentially that we own and that we govern, you know, I just don't know, you know, I guess if the focus is those right of ways of the actual
Right.
project that we're talking about, that's great. But, you know, to protect what Tom and Frank are referring to in some of the historical nature, it probably, you know, needs to go a step beyond, but a step beyond without, you know, compromising the economics of, you know, what this city is trying to achieve there. Because at the end of the day, if a project comes before the commission and it's been waived on every level.
Right.
And it gets approved, then, there's been a decision made.
Right, well, and you don't have anything to negotiate then. I mean, if the city wants to, for example, so like here in this redevelopment concept, this is just a footprint of what a building could be in that, the current parking lot, right?
Yeah.
And it creates a little alleyway back here. What do you gain and give? We want open space. Well, if you give away all the approvals for, this allowance and that allowance, and you don't gain the open space that's illustrated, then that's not a good negotiation. So this is that tool for, okay, if a developer comes in and they've bought up, this green field, or this, green play yard and all these businesses, and they want to abandon the right-of-way in the middle. Well, are you providing, shade trees all around? Are you providing a wider sidewalk on here? It's like, these are the pieces that we got to point to, and this is the tool that staff has and has asked for, that they can use for those negotiations. I mean, Colorado's been successful because of that process, where there was a charrette and outreach and the tools that staff needs to point, and part of that conversation with commission, with boards, with the developer. So this is something that an adopted plan, master plan can be part of that conversation that you're just talking about.
No, and I agree, and I think the point that Pete's making is that it needs to be, front and center of the process. And, I mean, I really appreciate the fact that you live and breathe this. So, like, this isn't, hey, we came down from Orlando, we spent a week here to analyze how much parking you have. I set a couple of, sensors out there, drove back to Orlando for the weekend, came back down, picked them up, and this is what my, sensors told me about parking in downtown Stewart. I mean, this is something that you clearly understand, because you park there, and you've driven there, and you live it and breathe it. So, that goes a long way in helping to lay the foundation for what's important. It's just, in my mind, the plan shouldn't be so far overreaching that it ends up resulting in a ton of variances or conditional uses. And to Pete's point, the plan should be first front and center with, these are the things that we need to get out of the projects in this area, and if you don't have it, it's not gonna go. When you go too far beyond, it's hard to say where that line can and can't get pushed back to.
Right, and Pete brought up a good point too, and I think maybe Frank as well, about incentives. Okay, yeah, you want to take out, historic structure here, or whatever it may be. Then let's have a negotiation about, what kind of pay and lieu programs could be there, or, relocation and incentive, or an incentive for keeping it, because it's important. So we'll let you have a density bonus for this or that. And that could be something that this plan could then further help to influence.
Tom, before Tom, just tell board members, we do have another item on the
Oh, I
agenda.
will.
We're
I'm
going to have to
talking
wrap this
too
up.
much.
And I just want, maybe you misunderstood me. I think what you did where the Baptist church is a great thing. But you step it down, because once you cross Ocean, you do have a completely different neighborhood.
Yeah.
That should stay intact. And I think what Azul did, I mean, I think I fought pretty hard for Azul. And in general, I think what happens going towards downtown should have more density.
Right.
And I think you're right about open space. We shouldn't give away density and not get something in return. But that's expensive stuff. And so they should be able to maximize their profit. What I don't want to see is the neighborhood that now is where you do have historic homes go away.
Right.
Because a guy assembled 3 of them and he says, oh, it's just crap.
Right.
And I don't want to fix them.
Right, and this is the concentration of that along Ocean, yep.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. I'll just wrap up quickly. It's not, I wanted, first of all, I'm not pinging on staff, because I know whatever gets to the commission, and when the plans are put, you do the best you can to meet the goals, okay? I just have seen, as time goes on, that the goals get missed. And some of the goals for this neighborhood are important, and I guess I'll depend on you to bring it to the city commission and for themselves to see for themselves, to see that the goals are important, that sidewalks and open space and walkability and accessibility is good. I'm not hung up on historic houses. There aren't that many. My wife grew up here from 1950-something or other, as old as she is, She could not remember one single person that lived in a single-family house on that side, as I once told you during the
Yeah.
interview.
This right here is the only single-family house in
Yeah.
the district.
She could not remember one single friend of hers in
That's
high
me.
school or anywhere that ever lived over there other than cars. And that, which is why the southern portion of it has been so much easier with little houses and law offices and stuff like that to turn into something nicer.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do we need a motion to get staff to bring back bring back a motion
Well,
to
Right.
accept that?
No, I
think
believe
that's what
that's-
she's
I'm looking for
shaking her head
direction that
yes.
staff come back with a resolution to adopt the master plan and also the naming of the district.
So moved.
So if the board is okay with the naming and, adoption, we will
Yeah.
make some revision based on comments received
You
today.
want a motion or just us waiting?
Just give direction, say yes
Okay.
to staff.
Yes.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Board members, I do have to leave in 10 minutes, so just giving you a heads up in case you have to see me abruptly leave. Next item is the tentative CRA budget, CIP for the year 2022, Resolution 6, 2021 CRA, resolution of the Board of the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Stuart, adopting the tentative CRA budget of the City of Stuart, Florida for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2021, and ending September 30th, 2022, providing an effective date and other purposes.
Thank you. First, I just want to go over some of the accomplishments we had in fiscal year 2021. We completed the Fraser Crescent Streetscape Improvement Project in the Fraser Crescent subdivision. We also completed 100% design for Seminole Street. We applied for the water quality grant for the streetscape project, and we made it through the first step of the approval process, and we expect to hear back by September of 2022 if we are awarded. We completed the conceptual design for MLK Boulevard. We attended, when I say we, I mean I, as a staff of CRA, attended community events for feedback, and the final design is budgeted for fiscal year 2022. We also completed 90% design for Riverside Park neighborhood project. We had neighborhood meetings. We met with property owners on site to address any of their concerns. And we expect to go under construction for the Phase 1, which is the blue highlighted section, in the next couple of months. We'll go through the bidding process. We received a grant for this project, a TAP grant for almost $600,000 for Phase 2 of the project, which is the remaining portion of the neighborhood. And that grant is slated to be received in 2024. So the remaining of the neighborhood will be constructed in 2024. We installed kiosks by Duffy's in Old Downtown District and another by Colorado in the Arts and Entertainment District to promote events and bring people into downtown. We designed and installed high visibility crosswalks and share markings in the East Stewart neighborhood. The Federal Highway Median Improvement Project is underway and expected to be completed by end of August. We also completed studies, as you saw today, for the master planning for US 1 and the Triangle District. This is really important for staff because we understand when we get development projects, we want to see how the development projects will fit in with the master plan. We don't have a master plan for these area. The only one that existed was before Kevin and I came into this position, which was for East Stewart. So we understand the importance of having these master plan when development projects come in. We also contracted with CGA to prepare design and engineer costs for the Guy Davis Park. So that's underway. Currently, we're doing pre-design survey, and we expect to have the conceptual plan by October, November, which will be presented to the board. The final design is in the budget for fiscal year 2022 for this project. And we were awarded $750,000 in CDBG for the housing rehab program. So those were some of our accomplishments in fiscal year 2021. Some of Public Works project that were CRA funded is a Riverwalk handrail replacement. This was recently awarded, so this will go in construction in the next couple of weeks and expected to be completed in November. Shepherd Park Improvement Project was also TIF funded, partially TIF funded, and this project is now completed. Dixie Highway and Southeast Florida Street Sidewalk was also partially TIF funded, and it's also completed. So we've had a successful year for fiscal year 2021. As for fiscal year 2022, the TIF revenue is projected to be increased by 19%. We expect to receive $3.1 million, which is the highest we've had in the CRA. And the county's TIF contribution is approximately $1.75 million, and the city's contribution is $1.3 million from the general fund, bringing us to a total of $3.1 million. Some of the new undertaking that we're going to be doing this year is we are looking to contract with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council to develop form-based code. We heard from the board members, and we are budgeting for form-based code for the East Stewart neighborhood and the Creeks Arts and Entertainment District. Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council was involved with the master plan for the East Stewart in 2003, so they'll be revisiting that master plan and updating any of the projects that have not been implemented in the plan. So we'll be looking to do scope of work with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and I have budgeted for the form-based code for fiscal year 2022. Another project that I'm looking at is doing sidewalk improvements in the Stipman neighborhood. This area is bounded by High School Avenue to the west, Palm Beach Road to the east, Ocean Boulevard to the north, and MLK to the south. There are some missing sidewalks in this neighborhood, so I thought this was a good opportunity to look at improving the sidewalk, to provide connectivity to schools. There's opportunity for grants if we do sidewalk improvements in this neighborhood, so staff will be looking at applying for TAP grants and safe route to school grants for this project. Some of other things that are budgeted we're in the pre-design phase, like I said, for the Guy Davis Park. I did budget for the Phase 2 design for fiscal year 2022. And based on the recommendations in the Triangle District Master Plan, I budgeted $250,000 to implement some small demonstration project in this neighborhood to show that CRA is committed to improving conditions in this area. You know, as staff, when I prepare something, I like to commit, dollars to make sure that we do invest money into this area to improve this area to allow redevelopment. For Federal Highway Project, again, CRA will be coordinating with Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. We are already in conversation to create a tree program on private property as recommended in the report. Staff was looking for right opportunity to implement that program. We are considering the program to be implemented initially in the Gateway Corridor on Federal Highway from Joan Jefferson to Canner Highway. This will help to beautify the corridor, and I've budgeted $250,000 for this project. And another project that we'll be looking at is doing a final design for MLK. This is a large portion of the CRA budget this year. The design for this project is approximately $450,000, but I think it's important that we start looking at design in this for this project, because that'll give staff opportunity to apply for different grants, that are out there. Usually, the grantors, they look for, final engineering plans, shovel-ready plans, when you apply for grants. So we'll be looking to apply for various grants once we go into the design phase for MLK. This map here shows all the CRA funded project for fiscal year 21 and 22. The CRA is committed to investing in the community by undertaking wide range of projects, from land acquisition, from infrastructure improvements, gateway improvements, master planning, public park improvements, neighborhood enhancements, complete street projects, and developing form-based code to achieve predictable building form and facades, and how the building will relate to the streetscape and create a walkable urban environment. So this map shows how the CRA is involved with all the different areas within the CRA. It's not focused just in downtown, but it's spread wide. So tonight, I'm looking for recommendation from the CRB Board to approve resolution number 06-2020, adopting the tentative CRA budget for fiscal year 2022.
All right, thank you. Any comments from the public online? Seeing none, for discussion, is there a motion
I'll make a motion to approve for discussion.
for discussion? Okay,
Second.
all right, seconded. Is there anybody want to have anything to say regarding the resolution? All right, that's.
Yeah, I do, actually. Pernell? I'm looking at the section in here with aid to private organizations, and I don't know, have we used the money? I know the business development grant we have, have we used the Brush with Kindness?
We use, Brush with Kindness, we have not used anything last year.
Not used any, and the community activities? Miscellaneous development
Right,
projects?
that's
mural
just set
pilot?
aside when, if there's something that comes up in East Stewart that we need to,
These are set aside then?
yeah.
Okay. I also noticed that up in the top, you've got your, whoops, gotta find the top. You had listed the, you zeroed out the infrastructure projects, but you put them back down in the bottom, is that correct?
Yeah, that's just how the financing does it.
So when I look at
Initially-
MLK Landscape, even though it's zeroed out in the infrastructure structure, it's down below.
Yeah, that's just how the
It's
financing.
something
they-
finance does in the process, okay? The other thing I did look at, and I just pointed out, not to make a big deal, is when you got into the budget itself, and I see revenue expended to date, I see zero after 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 zero. Is that indicative of what we've done or not?
Well, these are all the projects, Public Works, and
Say again, I can't hear you.
these are all the projects that are listed in the CIP. The ones that are for CRA are highlighted in yellow. For the
Okay.
Riverside Park Neighborhood Improvement Project, like I said, we're in that final phase to move forward with the construction. So that's gonna go out for
Those are the only two
bid.
then we have?
That's gonna go out for bid. So you're gonna see that we spent $250,000 for Riverside Park Neighborhood Improvement Project. The MLK Streetscape Design, we did not spend that because we're still in the conceptual phase, and I budgeted for the design this year, for fiscal year 2022. So that's what you see in the 2022.
Okay, so what we're looking then is that the yellow highlights are really the only
Those
ones
are
that are
the-
in the CRA,
Correct.
the only ones that we're really concerned with this budget. The other is citywide, right?
Right.
But we haven't spent anything except for Guy Davis.
Guy Davis, Federal Highway, that's already done. Stipman, Highland Improvement, that's something we're budgeting for this year. That's why you don't see anything in the current budget. Triangle District Implementation, again, that's fiscal year 2022.
No, I'm looking at this year, actually. I'm looking at revenue expended to date.
Right, because that wasn't budgeted in fiscal year 2021. It's in the new budget year,
Okay,
So that's
so
why
we're
you
spending
see
money
the-
from 20 then.
2022.
So we spent money in 2021
From
that we're,
20.
that we're taking out of next year. Is that correct?
I'm not,
Well, I guess what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the page that has the current budget, revenue expended to date.
right.
And then 2022, which is obviously a new
Right.
budget year.
So.
And if I
what-
look at that, I see that you had zero expenditure on there, on almost all of them, so.
Right, because we
There are
did-
numbers missing, obviously.
We didn't budget for that. And current budget means fiscal year 2021. That's what current budget means. And we did not budget for these projects, like Triangle District
They're due to
Implementation.
2022.
You have to look at 2022, and
Ah,
those are
I
the,
see what you're
They're
saying.
brand new to 2022, so
Right.
she hadn't spent.
I
it.
get you. Now I understand the concept. I really
Right.
apologize for that.
These are all new projects. The only ones that are, the older project is the Riverside Park Neighborhood project, which I said it's shown as 0.
I got you. Okay, now I understand the concept. The idea is that they were old projects, they're not budgeted.
No, just a quick
Is that the-
question. On the, like, page 12, 13, there's a department request, and then there's a manager recommended. Who's the department, who's the manager?
So I'm the
Manager is
department,
Dias.
CRA is the
Okay.
department, and then I meet with the manager and
Is
we go
Dias.
over the budget, right, city
Okay,
manager,
I just
correct.
wanted to clarify, because
Yeah,
trying to assign personalities to the
yeah.
line items.
Any further comments before vote?
Oh, I did have one question, if you don't mind, Chair.
Go for it.
Do we have any way of breaking down revenue, particularly TIF revenue, by district or by area?
Well, we are only one district. We're
We're
only
the
one
one
CRA.
Right.
We intentionally do not do that because we do not want to separate the neighborhoods and have a particular area, say where Nick Schroth owns property, to feel like it was getting not its fair share or too much, or it was donating in or whatever. We treat the whole CRA as one. The reality of it is, anybody could go on the property appraisers, gather the data for the parcels, figure out the taxes, multiply it by 0.9, and do a pretty good estimation of what the TIF generation was for those parcels. But the city intentionally does not do that because for auditing purposes, et cetera, we get
We're-
money from the county and it's one CRA.
Okay.
Any other comments? Not seeing, there's a motion and second on the table, I believe. Mike, do we need a roll call
Yeah, you do the roll call.
for money? Yeah.
So we're just gonna say yes.
Board Member Walker,
Yes.
Board Member Walson,
Yes.
Board Member Schroeth,
Yes.
Board Member Dooley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Campenny,
Yes.
Chair Lewis.
Yes. All right, is there any other matters before the board?
I have one quick thing. I want to make a motion that when the CRB gives grants, that they include trees. I wasn't here for when they didn't, but that they include trees or a reason why they aren't, if they're on a public right-of-way. In their proposal. I would like to have shade trees along all of our roadways, and I'd like to see them break up the space. We saw a very graphic presentation of what difference that makes. And so when Pete said that some things came through when I wasn't here that didn't have any trees included, and they got money, then I'd just like to see that they have some trees within their proposal.
Totally agree. Kev Freeman, Development Director for the record. It is a question that we ask all the time when we get development coming in. The issues that we face when we're putting trees in the public right-of-way are maintenance, long-term maintenance of this, and obviously the burden on the city or the CRA in perpetuity putting trees in place. So internally, the struggle is who's going to pay for these things long-term.
Well, I'm
I'll
talking about,
second
this is
Frank's
private,
motion,
this is
and
private
what I
property.
think Frank's
On
getting
private
at is,
property, absolutely.
if somebody's coming in and getting $20,000 from the CRA,
Yes.
they should be planting a tree
in
in
general,
appreciation.
With grants,
And I don't know the mechanism for it,
Yeah.
but, you know, I think Frank's referring to the, you know, tint place on Federal
Yeah.
that, you know,
Yeah,
is a
the-
sea of
Car
asphalt.
Car lot and the, car lot and the
Yeah.
tin
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
And I think that if Frank, maybe we play around with this, but if a proposal's coming through to get a grant, they have to show a landscape plan that goes along with it.
That would
Well,
cover.
hold it. Now we're all over the place. Sharpen up your motion so that I know what I'm voting on.
Well, I would like staff to come back with some way to do it. That's what my
Well-
motion is. I don't know. I don't want to take the time right now to
I mean, you
to
could,
say it, but if,
you could direct staff to come back as vague as that any future grants has to have some landscape element, or you could say flat out, you want criteria that requires X number of inches per dollar.
well, I don't want anything that detailed. I just would like to have them, what I'm asking for is for them to either show some trees, if they're on a public right-of-way, you know, if their property is there and they're getting money, then either show that there's some trees that are there somehow,
So,
they're providing them, or why they're not. That's the
Frank,
whole
we
thing.
just went through a whole thing about consistency and about having 2 or 3 trees planted here and there, and now you're saying, oh, we just want some trees, we don't care what they look like, we,
No, but I think
Frank,
Frank's,
that's not-
I think
I mean-
Frank's
I
saying
mean,
we don't
Tom,
want,
that's
we
not
just
what
want
he's
some
saying.
trees
No.
to create less of a burden. Frank's trying to not burden the process, but he's also trying to ultimately end up where we're not giving a bunch of money to folks to do things that further detriment a bad situation.
and again, I don't disagree with that in concept, but I think we need to have that much more, and I don't think we need a motion. Let's direct staff to come back with a proposed motion or resolution, whatever it would be, about what
A
Frank wants to do.
solution, a solution, that's,
And this will,
that's
we
what
can
we
discuss
need.
this will, yeah, this will encompass
That-
any activity which involves a grant from CRA on private.
Well,
Property.
I don't think you
agree.
need grants for private homes, but you need the commercial grants.
Commercial. Well, if it's on a main road, then that's
if-
what I'm talking about.
We'll come up with something.
But
Okay, so that's what I was trying to tell you, that we, the budget item for federal highway improvement implementation, I've already talked to Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and we're actually going to come up with a program and identify the properties and exactly where they can put the plant. We're going to work with arborists, who's going to tell us exactly the tree options. Once we have that package together, that item will come before you. The program itself will come before you for approval before we start implementing it.
That's only
for-
federal.
only for
That will be for
highway.
federal highway, but that will be the starting point. That's the gateway, and then we could, as far as the grant project goes, you know, I can start requesting as part of the grant request is that the board is looking for some sort of landscaping, you know, as part of the request, so.
I think the direction would be that the board wants to see landscaping as part of your
If
grant,
appropriate.
applications, and that landscaping needs to be conforming to whatever plan may exist for that area at the time said plan is, you know, either in concept, being concepted, or, you know, if there isn't one, you know, staff gets some discretion there in determining what a good landscape plan looks like.
Yeah.
I got what you mean.
Sounds good
I got
to
it.
Hey,
me.
Frank, one thing to follow up on, you weren't here, and I fought the fight that day also. And Nell does the best she can when these come in for these grants.
Well, I'm just
At
trying
one
to give
point,
them a
no, I
reason.
know, at one point, I know you're not picking on her. At one point, we had discussed the funeral home property on US 1. And we had looked at all the things we could do. Remember the old building? Yeah, I don't know if it's still there or not, unless it fell down.
That
Drove
one's-
a car into it.
Thank God. All the things that we could do with the business improvement grant. And Pinnell had worked up a package. Well, we missed an opportunity. And the lady that came forward, because she's more than willing to put landscaping in. She was more than willing to do it. And she'll come back next grant cycle and help with that. But we missed an opportunity because we didn't say, hey, you know what? How about we give you some more money instead of just what you want, and we can do something with the landscape property. Now, why we didn't, that's because we take our eye off the ball.
And it's also a match.
That's
Well,
okay.
I
I think
feel like, Pete, I
she
think-
sounded like she was willing to be honest with you.
And this is where I think we need to, like, Frank wants to provide staff with the guidance that now staff knows this is important to us, and when they come in next time, that should be part of the process. And yeah, we missed an opportunity, but,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
that right there is what triggered this conversation. And
Yeah.
now, you know, hopefully we don't see any more that don't
I'm-
have landscape.
And again, I would like to see something.
I don't believe everything should be written down word by word by word to pin people like a butterfly to a map.
Then you don't get what we need to get things done. You can't say, well, we're gonna keep it out there because this is what you wanted, you know what I mean? And then it doesn't get done that way.
But we have a right to say no.
Well, no, but then you're saying no to someone who's asking to get a grant,
Understand what.
and then you're gonna say, well, you know, let's not do it to her because she's here and she did her best. Maybe no one knew what we wanted. Let them bring us back something that we can vote on, that this is what we want. Why not? Isn't that the best way to do something?
Works for me.
It's fine, you know, I'll go along, Frank, I'll go along with, Tom, I'll go along with that. I don't think it's necessary to legislate everything we do in our little life, but if that makes you happy, that's fine.
It does make me happy.
The other
Definitely makes staff
point I
happy.
would like to make is that it is beyond me, and I'm a little frustrated at this point, and I'm sorry to take it out on everybody who listens about trees, that we have on the commission right now 2 people, Merritt Matheson and God's name forgotten,
Mike Meyer?
Mike Meyer, who are nothing but tree nuts. And we let things for trees slip through our fingers. And that is beyond me how we can let that happen.
Well,
And so
again,
that's,
we've just given them direction.
no, you have.
Well, no, we have, to come back with something that we can look at and say, yeah, this is the way we should proceed. I don't know.
Well,
what
and
else.
Pete, I think, you know, ultimately, I think if we'd have told that person 2 weeks ago or a month ago, you know, no, you need to plant some trees there, they would have planted some sort of tree, and inevitably, what Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council comes up with for a tree plan along Federal Highway would be in stark contrast to that, and we'd end up with, you know, something other than a cohesive plan, so.
You know, I don't agree with the plan that we did north of the bridge. I'm not sure I'll agree with the one that they're going to come up for south of the bridge. And so, and I know there were 2 commissioners that very strongly suggested a completely different kind of palm that got overlooked by the contractor. How those things happen, I'll never know. And I hate to get myself into a heart attack over trees, but there are people that care about them. And it should be foremost on their minds when things come to the city for development. And that's all I'm going to say on that one.
That's all he's got to say about Vietnam.
Right.
We don't want to discuss that.
That mass and mandating and everything else.
Is there, that's
all
for
I got to
Thursday.
say.
Is there anything else on the agenda?
I'll make a
No?
motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned.